Question 143, visual apparatus, the eyeball. The eyeball has a anterior and posterior segment. The center of anterior segment is called anterior pole, and center of posterior segment is called posterior pole. The line joining the two poles is termed axis of eyeball. The optic nerve enters the eyeball medially to the posterior pole. The eyeball has three coats: fibrous, vascular, and nervous. And it contains lens, aqueous humus, and vitreous body. The fibrous coat is the most external layer of the eyeball. Its posterior segment is called sclera, and anterior segment is called cornea. The sclera contains no vessels, so it is white in color, and it is nourished from episcleral vessels. And anteriorly it is covered by conjunctival membrane, and posteriorly it is pierced by optic nerve and ciliary nerves and vessels. In front, the sclera is directly continuous with cornea, and the line of union is called sclerocorneal junction. In the substance of the sclera close to this junction is a canal running circularly called sinus venosus sclerae. Here the aqueous humor is filtered into the scleral sinus, and the scleral sinus is drained into the anterior ciliary veins. The cornea is non-vascular structure, but there are numerous nerves, and it is about 1 millimeter thick. The vascular coat, in brown, consists of choroid layer posteriorly, ciliary body, and iris anteriorly. The choroid covers the inner surface of sclera, and it is a thin, highly vascular membrane composed of two layers. You have outer vascular lamina and inner choroidocapillary lamina. The ciliary body it controls the suspension of the lens and accommodation of vision. It is also the major source of aqueous fluid. It consists of ciliary muscles. Ciliaris muscle. Here you see ciliaris muscle. The ciliary body, which is directly continuous from the choroid layer. The loose fibrous tissue surrounding the ciliaris muscle contains numerous small vessels, or large capillaries, and you have ciliary processes which are connected with zonular fibers to the lens, also called suspensory ligaments. Now the iris here is a continuation of the ciliary body. It is a thin circular contractile disc suspended between the cornea and lens, perforated by a circular aperture, the pupil, which makes it possible for the light to enter the eye through the lens. You have the iris divides the anterior segment into the anterior chamber and posterior chamber. The iris is composed of connective tissue, vessels and nerves, and it contains pigment cells that influence the color of eye. And muscular fibers are involuntary circular fibers, sphincter pupillae muscle, and radiating fibers, dilatator pupillae muscle. Posterior surface of iris is covered with pigmented epithelial cells and is called iridial part of retina. The last coat is called the nervous coat, which is the retina. It is the sensory part of the eye, in orange. Just behind the ciliary body, it presents a jagged margin called ora serrata. And here the nervous tissue of retina ends, and pigmented layer of retina continues on the posterior surface of ciliary body and iris to form ciliary and iridial parts of retina. Here you have macula lutea, which is oval and it's near the center of posterior part. It shows a central depression called fovea centralis, where the visual sense is the most perfect. Medially to the macula lutea you have optic disc. Here the optic nerve pierces the retina. It is also called the blind spot of retina. The contents of the eyeball, you have aqueous humor in the anterior segment. It is drained into the scleral sinus. You have vitreous body, which occupies the vitreous chamber. And anteriorly it shows a deep concavity called the hyaloid fossa, which is for the lens. And the vitreous body is a colorless, structureless, transparent gel. The lens is transparent, colorless, and a biconvex body, firm in texture and devoid of vessels. It has anterior and posterior surfaces, and it is more convex posteriorly. Anterior and posterior surfaces meet in equator. The lens is enclosed in capsule and is situated behind the iris and attached to the ciliary body by a series of fibers forming suspensory ligaments of lens. Here you have a branch from the ophthalmic artery, which supply the eyeball, and the blood is drained into the superior and inferior ophthalmic veins, and the nerve supply is from the trigeminal nerve for the rest of the eyeball. The optic nerve is for the retina and the vision.